Right, well, I'm Ray Burns, but I'm otherwise known as Captain Sensible. I acquired that name because I was a rabid drunk actually, and not at all sensible. So I got the name thrust upon me, and not been able to shake it off since. Despite, I mean, I'm getting old these days, and so the drinking's taken a back seat. But I've still got the stupid name, so there you go. But the good news is, over 40 years, I've learned to play my guitar, and the band is sounding quite good at the moment. So if you know, if you like what the Damned do, then we're doing a fair representation of those records that we made back in the 70s and 80s.
Beautiful, mate. Thanks for joining us tonight. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, they say.
Yeah, it's a great name, the Damned. Yeah, I think the Sex Pistols originally wanted it, but yeah, we got it first.
You beat them to a few things, mate, didn't you? But we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So the Damned return to Australia in just a few weeks, mate, for a run of shows starting on March the 20th in Brisbane and heading to Sydney and Melbourne before finishing in Perth on March the 26th, mate. So are you packed and ready to go? Or are you the sort of person who leaves things to the last minute and invariably forgets something?
Yeah, well, I was once described as one of the music papers by as one of the world's most disgusting slobs. And this was during the chaos years, and it really was fairly anarchic. But I travel light, so I wash as I go. Usually, got me stuff in a hotel sink, and I hang it in the window. So if you want to know which room I'm in the hotel, just you see the pants there, and the socks. So I just travel light and blunder through somehow.
If it works, mate. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the special thing about this tour is it'll be the first time since 1989 that what is considered to be the classic lineup of yourself, Dave Aney, and Rhett Scabies and Paul Gray will be on stage together. So was it hard getting was it hard getting the gang back together?
No, because Rat and Paul have been working together on a project with some Americans, and me and Dave have been doing the Damned all this time. So there was a bit of bad blood. That was the only thing that could have got in the way, really. I mean, it was so long ago, I can't remember what we used to argue about. But it was all sorts of shenanigans, including fisticuffs and, I mean, attacking each other with empty whiskey bottles and stuff like that, as you do in punk rock bands. But yeah, but we buried the hatchet, and we're getting on okay now. And it's interesting to see what they've been doing all these years.
I guess at our age too, mate, it gets a bit hard to keep the fisticuffs up too, doesn't it? You get a bit slower and easier to hit.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, there won't be so much of that this time, but hopefully the chemistry on stage will kick in, because it was a magnificent noise we made back in the day. There's nobody drums like Rat Scabies. It's not just a great punk name. He's when he plays a song, it's as though he's going for it for the first time. He's never heard the song before. It's like every tune he plays is like a drum solo, and it keeps the rest of the band on their toes. It's quite exciting because you don't know what he's going to do next.
As long as he does it right.
Yeah, well, it's anyways right, isn't it? Really, in punk rock, and yeah, and the thing is, if you all end up at the same point at the end, and stop at the same time, then it's a success for me.
Now, different people have their own reasons for calling this the Damned's best lineup, mate. But why is it to you?
Well, it was when we went off on a musical adventure, if you like, because before then, punk was kind of defined, kind of homogenous sound, and you know, it was short, sharp shock of you know, 2 minute songs that played with kind of adrenaline, you know. And after with the Black Album and Strawberries, we went off on a tangent, and with Dave was bringing kind of goth stuff to the table, and me and Paul were interested in kind of garage psych, and we mixed it all up and produced the Black Album and Strawberries. And it was, you know, it wasn't tremendously popular with some of the, you know, the hardcore punk journalists in Britain, and we got a bit of a pasting in the papers, but a lot of fans went with it. You know, it was a very interesting time, and we were really adventurous in the studio. So on these kind of brainstorming sessions, like sort of, you know, we'd keep going for like 2 or 3 days. Nobody would go to bed. You know, we would just like do all these weird experimenting. You know, with opening the piano and banging the piano strings with drumsticks and stuff like that, and turning a tape over backwards. All the stuff, I suppose, that, you know, in the past the Beatles and other bands have done, you know. But it was so exciting, and the result was the albums that I mentioned. And so yeah, we're going to play some of that stuff.
Yes, yeah. And I suppose the big thing around is what can fans expect from the Damned live in 2024?
Well, I mean, we're going to play it. In the old days, it was, you know, you'd come and see the Damned. You wouldn't know which Damned would turn up. It would be the band that's really on top, you know, on top of things and playing well, or the band that's been drinking all day and kind of, you know,
Thinks they can play well.
Yeah. So I mean, these days, you know, you pretty much it's going to sound great, and we're going to play great. So that mainly because we're not kind of, you know, in a drunken stupor.
No, if we're all being honest, mate, like we are all getting on a bit. We're all getting a bit long in the tooth, mate. So with your live shows, like how do you compensate, I guess, for the fact now that you're not 20 anymore when you're up there on stage? Do you have to think about slowing down a bit, or do you just still get out there and run amok?
No, well, we write, you know, we write the set list, and the songs basically dictate, you know, the way the gig goes. It's you have to do the songs justice. And I mean, there's plenty of cover bands out there who do, you know, these same songs themselves, and they'll tell you the same thing. But, you know, the tunes are exciting, and they make you play, you know, with that kind of passion. So yeah, the songs dictate the excitement from the stage.
Yeah, cool. Speaking about dictating the excitement from stage too, bro, like do you guys have any expectation from your crowds? Like, is there anything that they can do to make sure you come off stage and look at each other and go, fuck me, that was special?
Oh, well, I've always really enjoyed, you know, audience participation, you know, between the songs. If somebody shouts some sarky comment, or, you know, or they hold up some a banner with some, you know, unpleasant, rude comment on it. I mean, that can create a running theme throughout the show. You know, I've always found that quite fun. I mean, when I used to go and see bands myself, before I was in the Damned, you know, I used to dress up weird and, you know, stand at the front and kind of try and intimidate the musicians, and I occasionally jump on the stage. And so I mean, who am I to it's blooming good fun, isn't
it? Well, except these days, mate, you can't really jump off stage and have it out with anyone in the crowd, because getting back up on the fucking thing's a bit more difficult.
Yeah, they do. They have these barriers. I'm always saying when we turn up the venues, I say to them, what's these, you know, these barriers all about? I mean, the health and safety dictates that they've got to be a certain distance from the stage and stuff. I mean, I want the audience up, you know, right up against the stage so you can get up close and hear what they're saying. So I've never understood that. I mean, the punk rock is supposed to replace the stadium rock of the 70s. That's part of the reason we exist, really. We were playing small venues, and in pubs and stuff like that. And yeah, that's the best way to see a band, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about barriers too, mate, that might make you hate them even more. Like, have you heard of an Australian band called Friends of the Rom?
I don't know anyone, to be quite honest.
That's right. You won't like them. They suck. They're big, good guys. But their drummer, Gordy, went to stage dive one night, like just lost in the moment. And he's run up and done this big stage dive. And he's hit the barrier on the way because the barrier was that far out. Broke his arm in that many places and he was out of drumming for about 6 weeks.
Jesus. Yeah, I fell off stage in Toronto and broke 2 ribs on a crash barrier.
Whoa.
Yeah, that wasn't very pleasant. I got to the hospital and they wanted $1,000 or something before they'd even look at me.
Oh, real.
Yeah, nice
Yeah,
one.
so there you go. They do more harm than good, these barriers. Let's fuck them off.
Yeah.
Now, word on the street, bro, has it that you personally selected, or actually rather demanded, that the Hard-Ons were your support band here. Is that true?
Yeah, they're my mates, Blackie and Ray, and for some reason, ages ago, I ended up producing them. Some rough little studio in Putney in South London when it was really unfashionable, and I mean they spent most of their time, the band, climbing in people's back gardens to retrieve this rugby ball they were goofing around with. So that was their idea of a recording session, was playing rugby in the yard. No, they're great guys, and the thing about the Hard-Ons, I mean, as you Australians know, because they marry kind of real melodic tunes with kind of thrash punk, and it's a really infectious concoction.
Have you heard of with their new vocalist Tim Rogers?
No.
Oh, you might not like him now.
Yeah.
No, they're really
it's
good.
Going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and I want to see the posters. The Damned and the Hard-Ons on the same poster. It's going to look great.
You should have called it "Give Me a Damned Hard-On."
Yeah, there you go. It might upset a few people, but that's what we're there for.
So let's go back in history a little bit, mate, because it's not often I get to talk to one of the gods of punk rock, but the Damned started back in 1976, mate, before the global punk explosion. So what was the climate like, I guess, that gave birth to the band, and where did you fit in initially?
Well, the reason we all started bands ourselves was because the big bands, the ones that were on TV and playing all the gigs, were basically so up themselves that they weren't. You couldn't relate to them or anything they were singing about. Wizards and pixies and King Arthur's Round Table and all these nonsensical kind of mystical lyrics that really didn't talk to a kid from a council estate. So we were basically doing it ourselves, and we just started these bands not with a idea of taking over the world or becoming big rock stars or any nonsense like that. We were just doing it for ourselves to make the music we wanted to hear. And I suppose enough people out there, agreed with that. The music was more exciting than watching, and like standing at the back of the stadium and looking at the 4 or 5 ants on a stage in a distance, so you can't see what they're doing. And then they used to put screens in, and I mean, that's everywhere these days, isn't it? These big screens, and you're watching the screen rather than watching the band. I mean, it's crazy. So that's what started punk in 1976. All these bands, and we didn't say we were starting a punk group. We were just doing something, you know, real and gritty, and you know, for ourselves. And the thing was, the journalists tied us all together: the Stranglers, the Clash, and the Damned, and you know, the UK subs, and they grouped us together as this punk movement, which surprised me because I didn't really see that coming. But there you go. Um,
So back then, mate, like you hear this saying all the time that punk music was more about the attitude than the music. But back then, when you guys started, was that really the case?
um, yes, it was. It, the music was fast and kind of angry because, you know, it was it was politically um, a bit grim, and there was nothing going on in Britain, and there's a lot of unemployment, and there just seemed to be, like Johnny Rotten summed it up so well, there just seemed to be no future. So we were all a bit angry, and so that's why the music sounded the way it did.
Then you released your debut single, New Roads, that same year, which is recognised as the first ever single by a punk band, beating Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols by 5 weeks. Like at the time, did you know that it was a case of whichever band got their song out first, it'd be the first ever single, or like was it in a race of sorts, or did it just sort of happen that way?
Well, the thing was, Sex Pistols and Malcolm McLaren, you know, were waiting for a big money deal, and that sort of stuff takes time. Whereas the Damned signed with a small indie label called Stiff Records, which were, you know, is run from a basement in a grimy little street around the back of Paddington Station. So it was we could do stuff quick, whereas they couldn't. They had to, you know, once they were in the big label EMI, I think it was. Um, you know, you get in a queue. You have to wait for Chris de Burgh's album, or Cliff Richard, or whoever the big acts are. You know, and yeah, so we beat them, and they look, you know, whenever I see Steve Jones in Los Angeles, you know, I always remind him of that. And but yeah, it's just we did it the DIY way, and there was no small indie labels at the time. I mean, Stiff Records pretty much started that whole thing. So that was punk rock, you know, do it yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And back then, mate, like, was there a sense of animosity between other punk bands like the Sex Pistols and yourself, or the Clash, or the bands that are more supportive of each other and trying to help you get through?
No, there's no. We all went to each other's gigs, because if we didn't, there would have been no audience. There was only
True.
about there was only about 40 people in London who were into this kind of music, and we all went to each other's shows and sat in the audience and criticised each other. I mean, I thought the Pistols were shit. You know, I thought they, you know, it was slow, turgid kind of rock music with, you know, with no get up and go. The only thing, you know, interesting about it was Rotten's voice, which, you know, his sneering and his snarling, it kind of took it to a different level. But you take him off the record, and I thought it was fairly fairly mundane. The Clash, I didn't like them much. I didn't think they weren't really ever going to do anything that experimental, and you know, they were never going to surprise you. Um, the Stranglers, well, yeah, I like the Stranglers. They were fairly musicianly, and you know, they were probably my favourites of the bunch. Um, but yeah, no, we weren't mates, you know, but we we all got on.
And is it true that Sid Vicious was supposed to audition to be a singer and he never showed up?
He did, yeah, he did apply, if you can call it that. And yeah, he didn't show up, so Dave got the job, which is a good thing, really, because Sid was on auto destruct. I mean, I liked Sid. He was a really fun bloke. I mean, we used to roll around on the floor having punch-ups in the Roxy Club, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I mean, he was a streak of piss. You know, he was very skinny, and despite his name, vicious. I mean, he wasn't really. I mean, he was, but he liked to play up to his name, and you know, he's quite impressionable. He wanted you to, you know, he wanted to be liked, basically, and so that was his way of going about it. We used to roll on the floor, throwing punches at each other, and yeah, we weren't hurting each other, but we ended up like sort of, you know, all cut and bruised by all the glass on the floor, all the broken glass. So that was pretty stupid.
It probably was. You might actually be in a position to answer this too, mate. I only just thought of this one, but over the years, the rumours have always persisted that Sid never actually played his bass in the Sex Pistols, that if someone else was doing it and he was just a front man on show. Did you ever hear anything about that?
No, I mean, Sid could play. I mean, I know for a fact, because we used to go to this Sue Catwoman's house, the lady who had the interesting hairstyle. I don't know if you've seen the pictures.
Yep.
We used to stay at her place in Ealing Broadway, and Sid wanted to learn the bass side. I used to sit him next to the Dansette record player, and we put the Ramones album on repeat, and we just go down the pub and leave Sid plonking away on the bass guitar, trying to pick out the notes for the Ramones' first album, and that's how he learned to play.
Wow. Very interesting. You'd mentioned in a couple of questions ago that there was only about 40 people actually into punk when you first started. So can you recall the time roughly when you thought, well, wow, this is starting to catch on, people are getting into it?
It just really happened quickly. Yeah. 1 minute you're playing, you know, a pub and there's hardly any audience. The next minute, you know, your record's out and it's kind of, yeah, it's getting good reviews and all that sort of stuff. So it happened so quick. I'm still surprised at it. You know, I thought punk rock would only last a few weeks because the big bands were so big. You know, the big stadium acts, Yes, and Genesis, and all these people. You know, I'd never thought that a unmusicianly bunch like us, because these people, a lot of them they were they had musical education at the Royal College of Music and stuff like that. I mean, these people could really play. Rick Wakeman, you know, he's a virtuoso. I mean, the Damned. Well, I mean, it was kind of a different kettle of fish, but at least, I mean, we were going up on stage playing with a passion. You know, we were absolutely desperate to get out of the, you know, the doldrums of despair that it had enveloped Britain at the time in the mid-70s. So, I mean, it was, you know, crack it as a musician, or become a burglar, or you know, a tramp or whatever. It wasn't. It didn't look good. The future, to be quite honest. I mean, I didn't particularly want to join the army, so ended up doing this instead. Yeah, that was it. There's no other options.
The Damned have been a pioneering and influential band in so many ways, mate. But what do you personally see as the Damned's contribution and legacy to music?
Oh, I don't know. I just think that any young bands out there should keep it real and like sort of go on a musical adventure and do whatever you feel, rather than, you know, go into a studio and make an album for. I'm not talking about the first album, the second or the third album. By then you should start, you know, being adventurous and, you know, seeing where you can take it, doing interesting things. And, you know, I mean, the Beatles, if you look at what they did within, I mean, how long was their career? Was it 8 years? Something like that. They went from all these kind of, you know, daft kind of boy girl songs, they went through this kind of psychedelic spectrum, and everything went completely, you know, weird and fun. So I think you're duty bound when you're in a band to take it as far as you possibly can.
Now, I don't ask this of many people, mate, but if anyone in the world out there is in a position to answer it, it'd probably be you. So give me your top 3 commandments of punk rock.
Oh, that's the first rule is there's no rules. So that's always been my philosophy. I mean, I used to, you know, because I've got a very high embarrassment threshold, and it's never bothered me, you know, behaving extremely badly on stage, especially because, you know, I was the one who got my picture in the music papers the next week rather than the front man, which probably peeved him greatly, you know. But yeah, the first rule is no rules. The second rule, I don't know. That's it. There's no
Refer
other
to
rules,
rule
is
1.
there? Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, mate. Well, thanks very much for your time today, bro. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. The Damn tour kicks off in Brisbane on March the 20th, and that happens to be my hometown, brother. So I shall come down and say hello.
Cheers. Yeah, nice one. Yeah.